So essentially what happened is these kids at school set up this ploy, this sort of fake out, where they would tell Aiden that they're all gonna dress up and do this cosplay thing, but it was a trick. Aiden showed up and he was the only one that was dressed up. This isn't your standard anti-bullying video. This is something that I had to get off my chest. Bullying has been a presence in human life since the dawn of time. Because we are a hierarchical type species, there's always gonna be leaders and followers. Now, the unfortunate byproduct of having leaders is there's always gonna be a chance for power gone mad. The quote-unquote alpha male who operates from a place of fear. This leads to less dominant individuals being taken advantage of. If you're new here, my name is Stephen Williams and I'm a black belt under John Danaher. I've been doing martial arts for close to 25 years, and I know a thing or two about bullying as well. So here's 5 ways that we can combat bullying. I shared this on Instagram stories recently, but I had a best friend in elementary school. His name was Yusuf. He was from Yemen. He was obviously an easy target for kids in school, especially in South Yonkers in the 90s. Forget about it. Kids would always look to pick on him. He was short, he was frumpy, but that's where I came in. I acted as an intermediary type personality to act as a buffer zone between him and the bully. And most of the time it worked. I realized at a very young age that there were different types of personalities. We had these dominant type personalities during recess, and we had these what we would consider to be beta male type personalities, and then you had guys that kind of fell in the middle. Now obviously this is more prevalent when you have a religious difference, when your culture's different, and when you're physically built in a way that's not very imposing. I recall one sunny afternoon when we're playing marbles during recess and Henry's being Henry, right? And I had to jump in the middle again, and I had to put the smack down on him. Now I had been suspended 2 times in elementary school. I was the kind of kid that had a really short fuse. I can kind of go from 0 to 100 very, very quickly. It didn't take very much, but especially when I saw somebody being taken advantage of that I knew couldn't defend himself. Especially a kid like Yusuf, who his family had let me into their house. We had eaten together. I had watched them pray. I had been invited into this environment, and again, I'm a kid from the basement, from poverty. Even had a cultural connection between us. So I was always grateful that Yusuf's family was so open to me, and I wasn't gonna let nobody take advantage of him. Now that's a cool story, but the unfortunate fact is that most people who end up being bullied don't have a guardian. They don't have a kid that's gonna protect them. They don't have this figure that's gonna act once again as an intermediary personality in between themselves and the bully. Now back in my day, not to sound like an old man, back in my day, but seriously, back in the day, bullying was simple. Verbal bullying, yo, your kicks are crazy. Yo, your jeans are too tight. You look like this or that, right? Verbal abuse, okay? And this has some long-lasting effects on people as well. And then of course you had physical bullying, which is self-explanatory. You know what I'm saying? Pulling on your backpack when you're walking. You remember in school when that one kid had that roly-poly book bag and he would walk with the book bag and roll it, and then you would just kick it, not you, but like someone would just kick it down the stairs and everyone would be like, look at this fucking idiot, you kicked the shit down. That's physical bullying, and that's self-explanatory. But now in the modern era, it's a completely different landscape. We have cyberbullying, okay? We have a situation where I can put out some falsified information about you, or even worse, something that's real but you don't want shared, right? Some sort of vulnerable truth about you. And now I can disseminate that information onto the internet, and it virtually lives forever, right? And that's the scary part is, back in the 2000s or even 90s, or obviously before then, you didn't have that issue. When you went home, you had the anxiety that, oh man, maybe I'm gonna get my ass kicked when I go back to school tomorrow. But the truth of the matter is, I didn't know if it was gonna happen. Maybe I can evade it, right? There was always that maybe we can avoid this conflict. But when these poor kids go home in the modern era, there's really no escape from it. They go on Instagram, there's a story that tags them. They go on TikTok, it's an issue. It's just a situation where they're not able to escape that sort of impeding, overwhelming sense of dread that's permeating their life. 41% of students who reported being bullied at school indicated that they think the bullying would happen again. That's something that doesn't sit well with me. You understand what I'm trying to tell you guys? So in other words, you get bullied. Okay, that sucks, I got bullied. But now I have that fear that when I go to school tomorrow, it's gonna happen again. I go to school the next day, it's gonna happen again. So there's this overwhelming sense that I'm in a never-ending story of potential drama, potential hardship. And what does that do to a person living in that space? Especially, obviously, it's a person that's not an alpha personality. It's not a person who really knows themselves and wants to prove themselves. No, it's a person that doesn't want conflict. It's a conflict-averse type personality, and that has detrimental effects on the development of that kind of individual. Of those students who reported being bullied, 13% were made fun, called names, or insulted. 13% were the subject of rumors, 5% were pushed, shoved, tripped, or spit on, and 5% were excluded from activities on purpose. Now, I know that this is a giant departure from the type of videos that I typically do on this channel, but it's something that I really felt compelled to cover. And the reason is, I have a friend. We once owned a gym together. We operated an MMA studio out of New York City in the Soho area, and and his name's Ed. Ed owns a gym called Atlas BJJ up in Albany, New York, and one of his students' sons recently was bullied. So essentially what happened is these kids at school set up this ploy, this sort of fake out where they would tell Aiden that they're all gonna dress up and do this cosplay thing. Aiden's into cosplay, and essentially forced him or motivated him to want to meet up with these kids. Now Aiden, being someone who's into cosplay, said, oh, I'm gonna meet up with these kids, we're all gonna be wearing our costumes, so I'm gonna wear my Spider-Man costume. But it was a trick. Aiden showed up and he was the only one that was dressed up. All the kids had their phones out, they belittled him, they made fun of the way he looked, they talked nonsense about him. It was a completely demoralizing type experience, and it's the type of experience that stays with an individual long into his adult life. Now, I can't show this on YouTube, but he ended up getting struck as well by this particular female and broke his nose, from what I'm understanding. I was tagged in the post because obviously I'm friends with Ed, but when this happened and when I saw this happen, my initial instinct was pure and utter rage. It was not rational. I was no longer a 30-something-year-old male. I was that kid who was protecting Yusuf, and I wanted nothing but pain for everyone involved. I wanted pure torture for these kids. But then I had that quick realization where I was like, wait a second, let's take a look at what's really happening. I'm not a perfect person, you're not a perfect person. I went through phases in my life later in life where shit got really hard for me, where I went from a situation where I was defending people who are being bullied to being the actual type of individual who might be capable of violence or picking on people. I was never a bad bully. I'm just saying towards my 8th and 9th grade, because I was raised in a really hard upbringing, I was homeless at a young age, I was living basically on my own in around the 9th grade area. I was jumping from couch to couch. I had a lot of anger. I would go to school with clothes that were severely wrinkled, that smelled like cigarettes. I had no confidence. So I was the type of dude that would snap quick, and this is right before I got into jiu-jitsu, so that's another topic that we'll get into in a second. So I was the kind of person that would look at someone, and even if they were a little bit below me in terms of the physicality, if I feel like I'm in a bad state of mind, I might snap on him in that moment, okay? I recall having one kid hold my pocket as we walked down the hallways of Roosevelt High School in Yonkers, New York. I was the kind of person that wasn't particular about who it was. I don't care if it's the bully, I don't care if it's the bully victim, I was just in a weird state of mind. So I say that to say this. As I was watching those kids do that, I knew what it takes to get to that point. A bad upbringing, parents that don't give a fuck about you. All those little intangible moments that happen in the development of a kid that forces him to strike out. Again, some become bully victims, some become bullied. But the thing that creates those two individuals likely are very similar. Some form of neglect in the household, some form of mistreatment in the household is going to lead to a sort of individual that's going to strike out and take out and project that kind of energy onto the world. They say that the universe is a mirror, and oftentimes we project what's internal to us. So if I'm getting abused as a young kid, or I'm not loved as a young kid growing up, then I'm obviously going to project that pain onto the outside world, especially if it's someone that I feel I can get away with it, because humans are naturally going to take the path of least resistance. Identifying bullying isn't hard. If your kid comes home and he has bruises or the strap on his book bag is broken, why don't you sit him down and have a talk with him? You know, and that's my issue, is a lot of the times these bully victims or bullies, as I referenced just now, is a product of the home environment. It's the father. If the father is an absolute savage, I'm talking about a perennial force as a man, the chances that his kid is gonna end up being a bully victim is slim to none. It's just the truth, because like is going to develop like, right? If the motherfucker is the real deal, then his son is gonna be a prime example of what that ideal is. He's gonna be the physical embodiment of what his father essentially is as a man. Now, what if your child is the bully? Listen, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if your kid is in his household and he's having mood swings and he's exploding and he's punching holes in the wall and doing things like that, chances are he's doing it everywhere. He's gonna probably be pushing that kind of vibe out in school and taking it out on people around him inside of his class, let's say, or whatever the case may be. And once again, this falls on the shoulders of the parents. You know, you really have to take the time to sit these kids down and go, what's affecting you? How are you feeling? How can we get past this? You have to have those open discussions. And I can't speak from personal experience. I'm not a parent yet, but I know for a fact that as a kid who struggled with anger issues growing up, that if I would have had someone to sit me down and have those talks, I would have probably not shattered my right hand at 12 years old fighting a teacher, because I didn't have that open dialogue with an older adult that could have given me that sort of clarity that I needed at the time. Being bullied has a long-lasting effect on people, and motherfuckers are walking around today and they don't even realize it, but they're 40 years old carrying baggage of that happened to them when they were 14. They still have insecurities. They allowed those insecurities to manifest in their present life, where now they're not working out, right? Because they don't feel good about themselves because of some that happened years ago. A fucking girl that left them with some And that now they're fat and they don't want to take their shirts off. And then their kid sees that they don't want to take their shirt off. And now the fucking gets run over to their son now. Doesn't have confidence because their dad doesn't have confidence. And the son doesn't have confidence in the dad. It's just a cycle of insanity where, you know, these little moments that happen when we're young start to perpetuate themselves. And man, you got to get that early on, right? You got to fix that early on. You cannot allow that to penetrate your life and your psyche as an individual, especially as a man. Your subconscious is going to record all of that information, and essentially what's going to happen is your subconscious is going to project itself out onto the conscious world, and that's what you're going to experience day to day. The number one way to deal with bullying, in my personal opinion, is building the individual into a fortress of strength, meaning put them in wrestling club if they're a young kid, put them in the local jiu-jitsu gym, okay? Develop those skills early on so that they look at themselves in the mirror and they see somebody that's of value. They see someone that's strong. Your kid starts to develop that ability to overcome adversity on and off the mats because now there's a correlation between what they're seeing in the real world and what they're experiencing on the mats. That's just gonna make a better citizen. That's gonna make a better son. It's gonna make a better daughter. It's gonna strengthen them in tremendous ways. Number two is speak up. If you're in a situation where you see somebody getting bullied, say something. In 8th grade, I had a kid in my class. His name was Lenny. I'm not gonna say his full name. And he was just sitting there minding his business. He never said a word the entire year. I never heard Lenny say a single word. This bigger kid, not the smartest individual, but definitely a physically imposing person, walked to the front of the class and started railing on Lenny, landing punches. His head was down on the desk, if you can visualize this, Lenny's head was, and he was ramming him, punching him while his head was down. As Lenny lifted his head up, blood was everywhere all over his face, and I remember this rage, what I had experienced growing up. I didn't do anything. Now, this was before jiu-jitsu, so maybe my confidence wasn't where it needed to be. I'd done karate, but I didn't feel like it was my business. That was the problem. That motherfucking memory stayed with me for a lot of my life. I didn't do anything in that moment where I could have. Speaking up is so crucial. It does something for the individual, the third party who's sitting there watching this person get taken advantage of. If you're the bully victim, Lenny never said anything. Lenny took the beating. The teacher didn't do anything. You understand what I'm saying? The teacher, the adult, didn't do anything. What does that send as a message to us kids sitting in the class? There's no repercussions to your actions, you know? If you're going through something that seems overwhelming in your life, you're being taken advantage of, don't be scared to say something. If it's not someone in your immediate life, a parent, a friend, a sibling, then communicate that truth with someone on the internet. You never know who would be there for you. And sometimes it's people that you don't really know flesh and blood that'll be there for you more than the people that you actually know in real life. Number 3, report the bullying. And I kind of gestured at it in the previous step there, but you gotta say something. You're not a fed. You're not ratting on somebody. You guys aren't running a fucking drug ring. You know what I'm saying? Say something. If the person's getting taken advantage of, have the courage and the balls to actually say something, because you're a fucking coward if you sit there and you allow somebody to be taken advantage of in your presence. You're just as bad as the bully. And I've been that person, so I'm not sitting here preaching. I'm saying subjectively. I'm talking to myself. I've been that person. 4 is some form of self-care. Now, I don't mean some pussified, get your nails done after you got a mega wedgie. I'm not saying that. I'm saying meditate. I'm talking about verbalizing and externalizing the pain that you've went through, because really what that does is it gives you the sort of ability to make sense of the experiences that you're having. If you keep it all pent up and you never verbalize and you never write things down and you never exercise those demons, they're going to end up manifesting in your life in ways that are not going to be flattering. And you may end up being the bad person at the end of this. And it's all because you didn't take the proper steps in order to get that outside of your body, get it out of you. So my tips would be journaling is a great option, right? Beginning of the day, set a timer for 10 to 20 minutes and just jot everything down. Get it out. Get it out of your subconscious mind and get it into the conscious world. Meditation, I like to set, it can be 10 minutes again, it could be a half an hour. You sit down in complete silence, you focus on your breath, you empty your mind of everything. You allow yourself to go into a complete state of thoughtless awareness, and this really helps in compartmentalizing all of those thoughts, demons, inhibitions, puts them in their right place so they're not just clogging your conscious thought. This is another one that I like. I want you to document what happened, because oftentimes these bully situations don't get documented properly. I want to know the location, the time, everything, because it's very easy for people to just say, oh, I didn't do it. Well, if it's documented, it's filmed, etc. Even if that means you have to film your face bloody and you got to film the kid, you film it and you share it, because there has to be repercussions to this kinds of behavior. Otherwise, it's going to continue to occur. You have to nip it at the bud to prevent this from happening. So make sure you guys document document this. And even if you're a third party, you're not the person being bullied, get it on video. Save the time and the date. As I've said before, this is a video that I had to get off my chest. After seeing that video with Aiden going through that, it brought back some old memories that had been sort of burrowed low in the basement, Uncle Steve's basement. I had to get it out a little bit. And if you guys enjoy this type of content, then I'd surely do things that are a little bit more thought-provoking in the future. Just as a parting statement, remember that if you are a parent, man, your responsibility is insane. As a man, as a father, I can't speak for mothers, but as a father, you really gotta become the mother. Man, you gotta be the man. You can't tell your son to do something if you're not doing it. You have tits. You have tits. You're telling him to go wrestle? You know what I'm saying? Be the man. Become the man. And then you don't have to tell your son, because your son wants to be like you. Motherfucker wants to be like you. Then that's gonna lower the chances of him being taken advantage of in school or being taken advantage of by anybody, because his self-confidence is high and it comes from the top. It comes from his father. It comes from his parents. Strangle Gang, as always, I appreciate you. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next one.